Well, welcome to Let's Talk. I'm your host, Denise Rolark Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer, and thanking you once again for joining us on this Friday afternoon or whatever date you might be watching the program. Got an announcement for you. Are you a Washington sports fan? Well, this is your chance to become part of the city's sports history. As the district prepares to host the NFL draft and welcome back a renovated Capital One Arena, and begin construction on the new Commander Stadium, a new exhibition at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library will celebrate the heart of it all with the fans. It's called Hail to the Fans. The Spirit of DC Sports is the name of the exhibition, and the Martin Luther King Library is looking for all kinds of memorabilia. They want photographs, again, memorabilia, personal stories behind them, whether it's a treasured ticket stub, a favorite jersey, a championship keepsake, or a family tradition passed down through the generations. Your memories will help the story of Washington sports. And if you're from the DMV and have a connection to any of our hometown teams, you're invited to share your history and help preserve this legacy for future generations. So if you happen to fit in that category, if you happen to be cleaning out your closet or your basement or your attic or under your bed, wherever you keep store stuff that you don't want the public to see, and you find some sports memorabilia, go to the DC Public Library's website and you can click the link to submit your items at, again, well, it's a long URL. I think we're pasting it up here, but it's www.dclibrary.org/hail-fans. It's dclibrary.org/hail-fans. So you can also click the QR code in the upper left-hand corner of the broadcast. So this is your chance to be a part of DC sports history. I can't wait for the exhibition. It's going to be really fantastic and memorable, I'm sure. Today, we're focusing on one of the most important conversations happening in our communities. We've talked about it before, and we can't talk about it enough, and that's mental health. As we observe Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, we're taking a closer look at the challenges too many individuals and families continue to face, and just as importantly, the people and organizations working every day to create healthier, stronger communities. We're going to begin with Alexander Brown, the new Chief Executive Officer of Together, an organization dedicated to empowering young people, amplifying their voices, and inspiring positive social, political, and economic change. We'll talk about breaking the stigma around mental health, the importance of prevention, and how communities can better support young people before they reach a crisis. Then we'll be joined by Dr. Heather Aaron, Chief Executive Officer of Whitman-Walker Health System. I call them our neighbors. They're right down the street on Alabama Avenue. But at any rate, we'll discuss how her organization is addressing longstanding health disparities, particularly east of the Anacostia River, where innovative programs are helping close the life expectancy gap through expanded access to healthcare using nutritious food, mental health services, and community-based resources. So looking forward to that discussion. But before we begin, let me remind you to pick up this week's edition of the Washington Informer. It's available on your newsstand. Of course, I have this week's issue here as well. You all know I always like to show the copy of the paper because we are still printing. People say, you're still printing? Every week I say the same thing. Yes, we are still printing, and we'll continue to keep printing until we can't. That's the answer to that. But if for some reason you haven't picked up a copy of the Informer or you haven't gotten to it, you can always go to our website at washingtoninformer.com. And while you're there, we're asking you to click the subscribe button and become a digital subscriber so you never miss the stories that matter most to our community. And if you're enjoying today's program, please share the broadcast with your family and friends on social media. You can also follow the Washington Informer on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe to our Washington Informer TV YouTube channel. We want you to click the button if you're on YouTube and subscribe. You just don't know how much that helps us when you become a part of the Washington Informer family. So do it right now. Now let's get started. Again, please join me in welcoming our first guest, Alexander Brown, Chief Executive Officer of Together.
Hi, good afternoon, Denise. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's an honor to be here today.
No, it's an honor to have you and to learn about Lead Together. It's an exciting program or project. I don't know how to describe it that you put together.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about Together.
Absolutely. Well, first things first, we're in a time right now in the political landscape where a lot of Gen Z and younger voices are feeling disconnected more than ever. Together is going to be the company that's trying to position ourselves to be the people that are trying to bring people to the table. We all have differences. We all have different ways of how we want to go about operations in the political system. But let's talk about our collective responsibility that we have as a country and also as a person that was raised with the notion that when you see in the face of a stranger, you should see a friend. And I believe in our programming, it's trying to empower our future voices of our country and also the entire world to have a sense of urgency in saying that you too can be a part of that change you want to see.
So I like that. That what you just said sounded like a Southern thing. When you when you look at somebody's face, you see a friend. And
Absolutely.
I've heard stories about, well, it depends on where you're from. Some people speak
Absolutely.
to people all the time. Some folks don't. And
Yeah.
what is it? What is that barrier that we tend to put between us? And what causes that? And what impact do you think that it has on us mentally and emotionally?
Absolutely. So I want to just take a scale back because I'm from South Carolina, so the hospitality is in my veins for many generations. But when it comes to those conversations, they can be very uncomfortable to have in terms of the silos that we are self-imposing within our own communities, but also just as human to human. Because when we talk about mental health, when we talk about these things, they're not the most comfortable conversations to have because it requires vulnerability. It requires you to kind of go past the surface level in terms of thought and also a little bit deeper than that. So I believe that as people, we're operating in our day-to-day operations, but we don't really have the full grasp of what the other person is dealing with. And that's why I implore everyone, especially with my work at Together, if you should every morning wake up with the intentionality of saying, what can I do to put my feet in someone else's shoes? It doesn't have to be there for 30 minutes, doesn't have to be there for an hour, but even for a couple of seconds, change your perspective and just realize that we have so much more in common than what actually divides us. And I believe that mental health is one of those things that truly we all collectively go through. We all have our days that we're up and down, but it's our collective responsibility once again to figure out how we can seamlessly come together to talk about that in a more safe environment and, tap into the vulnerability because vulnerability can be your power at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying, and I also see that people's life experiences sort of define how they
Absolutely.
interact with other folks,
Yeah.
and everything from institutional racism
Yeah.
to, I mean, all kinds of things that people use that divides people,
Yeah.
and so I mean, it sounds easy to say let's put things behind us, but
Yeah.
I mean, how do we get around that?
That is such a phenomenal question. I think it's timely more than ever. Our country just celebrated 250 years since, the birth of the American experiment, like I was called democracy. And, in those 250 years as an African American man, I've been digesting what that meant for our people and our communities. And I believe that the best positioning that we can give ourselves is one, acknowledging what happened in the past and using it as a catalyst to push us to the future because we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, and there are a lot of different pockets of talent and also solutions that we are trying to cultivate as a community. But like you said, it's not an easy task, and I don't think it was designed to be an easy task or easy lift. But I do think that we do have the same in terms of heartbeat of what we want for ourselves, and that is security, that is safety, that is a sense of community during these times where I feel like between the age of social media and all of these other tech things can create those self-imposed silos that you can kind of feel alone. And I believe that there are a lot of people out here that are walking day to day with that. And like you said, with the whole institutions and also the systemic piece of that, that cannot be ignored because that put us at a deficit and that impacted our community disproportionately than any other community. But I believe that I'm a firm believer, I'm a radical optimist. And I grew up with a very, very, very Southern Baptist grandmother who once told me that truly the basis of you being an optimist is by your faith to believe that there is something better on the other side and that greater is coming. So we have to hold ourselves, to that and look to the light at the tunnel and not the darkness within it.
So where does together fit into this? What is specifically, how do you, address or
Yeah.
engage in this conversation?
Absolutely. So we have three different pockets, and I'm a big person that likes to break things up into three different sectors. So walk with me. The first one's going to be just from a programming standpoint. When we're talking to Gen Z and younger voices, they need somewhere that they can actually build and they can talk and they can create space for each other. So I think Together has positioned itself as a company that is facilitating a lot of these spaces, just trying to one to start from the floor and say, hey, what can we do to actually come together and what does that look like? So being the median and also being the person that's handling the logistics of what we can even do to get Gen Z and younger voices to the table in the first place and where is that going to be? The second place is going to be what is needed. Where are we seeing the gaps? What can we do to actually fill those gaps? So a lot of our wing is actually research based and it's also going into a lot of the things that we don't have the expertise in, especially with mental health. As I mentioned, a lot of our pillars are based in civic engagement and also the entertainment and sports world, but there are also niche issues that every industry is experiencing. And mental health has been one that when we're engaging with younger voices, it comes up for so many different pockets. So we want to engage with mental health, other organizations, certified counselors, and also talk about what resources can we start pumping into our Gen Z and our younger adults as they're going up in the world. And in this landscape is very turbulent, and it's very easy for you to lose yourself if you're on a ship that's not anchored to something. And then lastly, I think it's just from the messaging standpoint of realizing that stigmas have been really sweltering the conversation of mental health for so long. And we want to, debunk that. We want to really make sure that we are using the correct messaging to tap into not only the intentionality of what it means when we talk about mental health, but the reality. We are losing so many young voices. We're losing so many young talent from the actions of suicide ideation, and also from other, facets where, people are waking up and they don't see promise in their lives, and we want to renew that back. And just to go on a short tangent of really what was my charge to keep is I lost one of my high school best friends to suicide. And every day I've asked myself, what could I have done differently? What could I have said? What could I have positioned myself to do? And I believe that there's somebody on this call or even somebody that's watching right now that's probably in the same shoes. And I want to be the person that speaks over and over again that you're not in this alone. And there's somebody that is willing to work with you and also talk to you, because that's what all we have. And truly on this planet, that's all we need is each other.
So that I mean, since you ask yourself that question, and maybe you just said it in as you continue to speak, but what answer have you come up with? What could you have done?
Yeah.
Um,
That's a great question, Denise, and it's one I live with frequently. And even with my work within Count Me In, that's been really driving the mental health programming back in South Carolina. That's been one of the conversations I ask myself. And to give you an answer that probably will not satisfy your the question, but it's an evolving answer that I always tell myself, or I always am trying to figure out. And I believe that the best thing that I can do, though, is within this work try to forge light in darkness and try to bring people to the table that once would never even see a seat possible. And I believe that every day that you should, when you're in these spaces, whether it's an advocacy lane or whether it's, with me being, the chief executive officer of a company that's engaging with younger voices and Gen Z voices, some people just want a shoulder and they don't really care what that shoulder looks like. They just want to know that there's someone that's going to catch them when they fall. And that's been one of the answers that I've been, telling myself, is that maybe if I was positioned to be a more firm shoulder, and I'm a human too, so I also need a shoulder as well. So I think that's where it taps into that collective responsibility. But once again, it's an evolving answer that every day that I'm doing this work, I'm kind of answering, and God willing, hopefully when that day comes, I'll finally get the answer that all of this was for.
yeah, I'm really glad to have this conversation with you, because we are you talked about the current times and the situations we find ourselves in right now, where the country is right now, how divided it is,
Absolutely.
how my colleagues in the news media start the broadcast off every day with who killed who, and
Right.
police
Yeah.
against this person, and it's just, and it's sort of driving
Mhm.
the nail deeper into the mental health concerns that people have.
Yeah.
How would you, what would you recommend for people to start your day?
Yeah.
How do you start your day?
I'm a big faith person, so a lot of my getting started in the morning day really just goes into silence and just actually just being alone and being able to just really be based in faith and just have the moment of just silence. Because you mentioned we live in a very loud world, and it can be very daunting when you turn on and the first thing you hear is shooting, or you hear like something that's happening in your community that is gut wrenching, that does pull on your heartstrings. And I think as humans, it is not we were not built to consume all of that all the time, which is why I encourage people when it comes to the news, please make sure you know what's going on in your communities, but do not let that be the first thing that you wake up to every morning. Because what my father once taught me, and he taught me this beautifully, is that the loudness of the world is not going to stop. It's not. It's going to honestly probably get increasingly loud. It's our jobs to find a sacred place and a quiet place that we can actually just atone to what we can't control. And in this moment, I believe it in this landscape, every day you're seeing a headwind that's happening, whether it's in Washington or whether it's in your backyard of something that's just trying to grasp your attention and pull it away. But you have to be the person that's protective and, protective over your personal being, because what is in your wheelhouse? What can you control? You can control putting on your pants in the morning, cooking you a breakfast, going on a walk. And I've been talking about this as things that people kind of are distant from, but truly you not understand, or I think a lot of people underestimate how small of a task it can be to just go for a walk, to clear your mind, turn on some motivational music, turn on that podcast that you've been wanting to get into, but work has been too much. And, return back to yourself, because this is the season where you have to, in order to honestly survive, because the world is going to increase its volume, but it's our charge to personalize and keep our personal volumes at a level set that's healthy and it's mindful of what we need in this moment.
Now I'm getting ready to flip the switch right now, because in addition to having that personal time,
Yeah,
one of the things that folks often say is it's good to help somebody,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And this, we're in a time where, again, because of the times, I mean, there's a
yeah,
lack of food, people
yeah,
need housing, they need,
yeah,
there's a lot of needs,
yeah,
and there are organizations that help to support those needs, and sometimes volunteering. I'm wondering, how do those opportunities to really help others
yeah,
help you? I mean, help
yeah.
yourself, your mental health.
Absolutely. Well, I believe that my charge to keep on earth was being a public servant, so that in everything that I'm doing, I wanted to have an impact and I wanted to be helping a solution or helping to craft a solution that someone has been dealing with. And I had once had a speech and I was talking about how my charge to keep into the day that the Lord calls me home is going to be working on the issues that are keeping people up at night. Because I believe that every person in this country deserves the right to have the access and the ability to live a stable life without it feeling like they are killing themselves in the process. So when it comes to volunteering and when it comes to giving back into the community, I don't look at that as what people tend to is transactional. A lot of people are running away from volunteer opportunities because of the basis of compensation, but I believe you are still being compensated, and you're being compensated something that is more further than what a currency could provide you anyway. And that is the ability to see that and I always tell people that you never know what a drop of rain could do to the ocean. Literally, little by little, every action you do to give back to your community, it will impact someone, whether it's even you, being seen as a volunteer. And I think in our communities, specifically in African American communities, sometimes you have to see yourself in that work. You have to see yourself and have the urgency to, have representation in those spaces for people to actually believe that it's possible and it's able to be done. But I look at volunteering and also just getting back to your community, one, as a means of survival, because ultimately Washington is going to do what's going to do. Your local government, all of these other institutions that we've been relying on for a very long time. This is a landscape where we're now watching a lot of systems fail us, and institutions do fail. But there's still something that is sacred, that is protected within all of our community, and that is the power to look at, once again, in the face of a stranger, a neighbor, because you understand that when your neighbor eats, you'll be able to eat. It's a reciprocation that will keep us for times to come. And that no matter what the landscape provides, as long as we are lock and key and that we are all we have, there's nothing that can come against us that will succeed in terms of tearing it apart. As as adverse and as strong the winds may blow, we have each other to keep ourselves anchored. And I believe that's something in our country and our communities are going to be, really, really being protective of over the days to come.
You talked about the 3 points, and as I listen to you, I see the preacher there, so that that all sort of fits together.
Oh
But
my goodness.
how can people? I mean, if they want to connect with Together, and
Yeah.
then what are the opportunities that Together offers for young people that are, and I say young people because I think
Yeah.
that is your focus.
Mhm.
But what are the opportunities that exist for them with
Yeah.
Together?
And I'm glad that you brought in the piece though at the beginning of your question is that we also want to scale. We also want to have a company that's going to be based in representing all people. Young voices are obviously our urgency right now during these civic engagement times because being frank, when it comes to civic engagement, we don't really have to worry about our other demographics, especially the older generations. They have a history of being, active in civic engagement and also putting their best foot forward. Where the disconnect is happening is within Gen Z. So I see this company of being an opportunity for Gen Z to come to the table and younger voices to come to the table, but also to do almost like a passing of the torch. Our older generations have been fighting and being the front line of every almost major social change effort in our nation's history. And it's our time to stand up and take that charge and keep it, sacred to the heart. For any person that's interested in joining Together, we're going to have an ecstatic list of programming that's coming out in the fall, mobilizing on college campuses, because we believe that sometimes you just can't just tell people come to you. You have to go to them. So we're going to be activating all across the DMV, starting with DC at select campuses, and it's going to be getting into, once again, as we're in a midterms year, educating folks about what that means, even being a young voice, and how truly I've been telling the spiel over and over again is how one vote can change it all. One vote can dictate what this will look like next year, and you could be that one vote that determines that. So to have a sense of urgency in our programming is going to be one of the key elements. But we're going to be listing internship opportunities that are going to be able to submerge you into the work that we're doing, and that can be from operations all the way to mobilization work to even doing a little bit of communication stuff. We're going to have some volunteer efforts because, as someone that has been based in the nonprofit sector for so long, I believe that as a company, it is our charge to keep to also go back into these communities, and whether it's doing subtle drives, like you mentioned, food security is one of my biggest issues that I've been dealing with my nonprofit of trying to combat. So I want to make sure that we're diversifying the access that we have to opportunities all across the board to empower a sense of urgency within this generation that you too have a charge to keep. I keep on saying charge to keep because that's the basis of my faith, but you
Right.
do have a purpose. You do have something that is on the other side of this, and it's calling out to you, and that moment is now.
So we're almost out of time. We are out of time, Alexander. But when I look at Together, Purple, and I am hearing some political things going
Mhm.
on here.
Yeah.
So especially with that, your flags.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand the connection.
Mhm.
At purple I see, so it's sort of not the red or the blue,
Yeah.
right? It's purple. So is there a political piece to this that I may have missed?
So, just also as a baseline, everything we do in this life is going to be political nowadays. There's
Hmm.
always going to have some type of political urgency that's calling out to us. But our job is to scale that back. And even with the flags, I am a lover of this country. I believe that we are not in our best days yet, and that those best days are yet to come. And I am proud to be a person that's able to be a public service in a lot of these sectors. But the political wing is just not getting into the letter that's beside someone's name. We're not really enamored with a Democrat or Republican or independent and elsewhere. We're more enamored about the comprehensive way of going about any political ideology and coming together because we have much more that's uniting us than dividing us. During these times, I believe that we have to we have to have common sense solutions, and the common sense solutions come from having things in common. And I have a really record of working with people all across the aisle, and I don't see letters, but I do see work that's going to be able to translate back to our communities. And I want the Gen Z to and the younger voices to realize that one day we're going to be leading this country. We are going to be the ones that's going to be holding the mantle. We're going to have the pulpit. We're going to have the purse strings. We're going to have it. And I want us to be prepared of how that translates into the civic engagement piece. And that starts with you being the basis of a voter, that submerging yourself into the system that has been discounting our generation for now many years, and bringing it back as a civic action for us to have the urgency to say, we're not finished. Do not discount us. Do not leave us out this conversation. We are going to be the leaders that can push the mantle, and we can fix some things because we have a common sense way of looking at it.
And what about funding? How's your organization? How's Together funded?
Absolutely. So we have an static membership model that allows students to basically subscribe to it, almost like your Apple Music or your Netflix subscription, just as easy as it is for our subscription. That basically gives memberships perks. So we are able to offer basically access to networking events, also discounts on pertinent things. I know when I was in college, one of the biggest things that I would love to discount on was technology. So we're building out partnerships with some tech companies to make sure that we're, allowing students to have accessible discounted materials and just a list of perks that go into basically also the affordability piece of what it means to be a college student nowadays. Everything's high. I mean, even outside of college, but we want to make sure that our membership model is based in like obviously the affordability piece of what it means to be a college student, but we're also seeing the return on investment so that when you are subscribing to our model, you have access to once again, the talent pipeline that we've been beautifully able to craft with our phenomenal partners in this work, cross industry, cross sectors, and also making sure that, we're sustaining ourselves as a company to do the good work in terms of mobilizing, hopefully across the whole DMV. But right now we're focusing on Washington, D.C. as our basis of operations.
Got it. Okay. And then the last thing I want to ask, because you know, you created, I assume, this organization because you thought that there was a void. There's something that was not happening related to the Gen Z community that you thought together could fill. What is that? What is that
So,
void?
yeah. So to answer your question real briefly, also though, I did not actually create Together.
Okay.
So there was a previous CEO for me. Her name is Midori Grabowski. She's phenomenal. So I basically got selected, and the infrastructure was kind of already standing. But I'm looking forward to building onto that and making it
Okay.
have more longevity.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. But the void that I'm sensing is that once again to go back into the piece and to bring back some points real briefly, the void is going into one, you fear the things you don't know. And there's a disconnect between the education piece, what happens in our political systems, and also just the civic engagement piece and just a worldview. That's the void, but also the void is just, opportunities are looking very different now with this generation now being raised up in a turbulent job market. When they are now looking at, things that are happening in the governmental landscape, it can be very daunting and discouraging of where your place is. And I believe that that void has been matriculating, and people are, and I talked about it in my previous interview and also my debut op-ed under the wing of Together, is that people are exhausted. And I think that that's not talked about enough. Is that people, our generation is trying. They're trying to force through fire. They're pushing the needle on issues, and they're trying to be catalysts. But there's still a disconnect that's happening when it comes to the trust that's being presented by the older generations of whether or not we hold the capacity to lead. And I think what Together, what we want to demonstrate is that we have a plethora amount of leadership power, and that they are ready to get to work day one if just given the opportunity and presented the door. And Denise, I made an analogy previously in another interview I did, is that there are a lot of members of Gen Z. I want people to walk with me for a visual. There are a lot of members of the Gen Z that are walking beside a building every day. They're going to their 9 to 5, or they're going to their work. They're going to do an internship. They're doing these things just to be sustainable, just like everybody else in the world. And there is a door that is on the second floor of that building that they're passing every day, but they can't get to it because they don't know it exists. But how beautiful could it be that if we started crafting a strategy that allowed these Gen Z and younger voices to know, hey, look, I don't know where the door is, but it's in this building. One connection could do that. You get in the building and then you reach somebody else. Hey, I heard it somewhere on the first or second floor. Just guidance, just leading the ordering the steps and trying our best to really show Gen Z that it is possible and that it's not all doom and gloom, and that together we're going to focus on how we can get you to that door so that you can matriculate and hold that door open for the person behind you, because that's what it's all about.
Well, as a person who didn't have a category when I grew up, I wasn't a millennial, a Gen Z, a Gen Y, or any of those. I just grew up like most
Yeah,
of us did,
yeah,
and we, we found our ways through
yeah,
those doors were left open as
yeah,
they are now because our
yeah,
generation, the whatever we are, we're the boomers. So
yeah.
the boomers
Mhm.
are passing the baton like crazy. We
Yeah,
don't want to do it anymore. We're living longer, but we don't want to do it anymore, right?
absolutely. Yeah,
So we just, our thing is feeling comfortable, and that's where you are, I
yeah,
guess, Together comes in, and
yeah.
letting folks know, if I pass the baton or drop it,
Mhm. Yes. Yeah,
whatever happens, that there's someone there to grab it and to or to pick it up and keep us moving forward. So I see where together fills that void. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I really want to thank you, Alexander, for
Thank
being
you.
with us, to enlightening us about the organization and your
Absolutely.
focus on mental health as well, another tier that you've added. And we look forward to seeing what happens in the future.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I also want to say one last thing to my audience that's listening. Subscribe to the Washington Informer today, beautiful media source. And also during this time, we have to be protective of our media sources, and the Washington Informer is the right place to do it at. So subscribe today.
Well, I've seen you on other interviews, and I didn't hear you say that about them. So I appreciate that. I
Thank you,
appreciate that.
Denise.
And I didn't
Absolutely.
have to pay you to do it. So I
Thank you so
thank
much,
you,
Denise.
Alexander. Have a wonderful day, and feel free to, follow up with us as, especially as we pass this midterm and start getting
Absolutely.
into the 2020, what is it,
Yeah.
2028. Oof, it's going to be an
Yeah.
interesting few years.
It is. It is. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Talk to
All
you guys soon.
righty. All right. Take care. All right. So that was interesting. And, we know that this generation is really active and engaged and looking for opportunities to make a difference. I mean, we'll talk about that another time because I can definitely see, sorry about that, you all. I can definitely see where this conversation has a bigger space. And, you know, if what Let's Talk can do to bring those voices together so that some of us can just sit back and listen and hear the direction in which folks want to go. And then we can figure out where our role is in supporting that trajectory, that movement forward, because none of us can do this alone. We haven't and we won't be able to. So I appreciate having Alexander with us. And I'm really looking forward now to talking to Dr. Heather Aaron, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Whitman-Walker Health System, my neighbor down the street. How are you?
Hello, hello, Dr. Barnes. How are you? So good to be here. So good to
So,
be with
uh,
the informer.
so I have to tell this to everybody. I don't know where this Dr. Barnes came from, but I am not Dr. Barnes, although my email address is DR. Some people must think it's Doctor, but you see that Denise Rolark there. So maybe one day it'll be real, like yours.
No, it's official. You just made it official.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank
So
you.
glad that you are with us because, like I said, Women Walker, I just walked past there the other day over at Sycamore and Oak, and just knowing that the organization invested. I mean, you had Max Robinson Clinic down there on Martin Luther King Avenue, but then, let's expand the healthcare system, and let's build it, go into a new location. And now it's just trying to get people in the door, I would think. Is that the case?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for being our neighbor and passing by here. I call this the Max Robinson building has so much history that came with putting this together, because Whitman Walker itself, the organization, the Whitman Walker Clinic that everybody knew of on the Northwest side,
Right.
the board actually came together and made a decision that they needed to expand much bigger into Southeast DC to address the public health issues in Southeast DC. So we're very grateful for that. We're very grateful to have the name of Max Robinson as for this building, as the history of Max Robinson himself and the family allowing us to have that name. So we come with lots of history, and we come wanting to make a difference within the community, but with the community's voice. And so it's great to be involved with the Informer. That is really part of serving the community.
I do want to take a minute though, Dr. Aaron, because Max Robinson has been gone for a long time, and there probably aren't a lot of people out there who know who he was and what his contributions were to media, and why the center ended up being named in his honor. Do you mind sharing that story?
Oh, lovely, great. Yes, so Max Robinson, back in the early days in television, a Black person was not allowed to be on the screen to show their face. They can speak behind the scenes. And so, making long story short, one day Max decided that he was going to just take that down, and he showed his face, and he got fired. And that propelled him to move on to, I believe, in Chicago when the riots were going on. And he became very famous then for being an anchor and being, on television and being seen. And then he was on major television programs in New York. But one of the things that people didn't know is that in his latter days, he suffered with HIV and AIDS and ultimately died from full-blown AIDS. And when he died, he allowed his family to tell the story. And seeing that Whitman-Walker's foundation has been from the onset of the pandemic of HIV and has served so brilliantly through that whole process, having his name as part of our history was really something that we wanted. The administrators back then asked the family, and the family gave us permission to take the name of Max Robinson. So we're very, very proud of having that name and that legacy with us here.
He definitely had a very strong and rich and memorable legacy. And now that I've asked the question, I feel like we at the Informer need to go back and do something on Max Robinson to remind people, because he was a pioneer in the news business, starting here in Washington, D.C. And so with that, as you have talked about, I mean, Whitman-Walker started off really focusing on HIV and AIDS. And then there was this criticism, I guess, of the organization that because it was on 14th Street in the downtown area, that it was neglecting African Americans that were impacted by the virus or the disease. And you all sort of stood up quickly and said, no, we're going to we're an equal opportunity health provider here. We're going to make sure everybody is included, because DC had a really high incidence of AIDS back in the day. Is my recollection of that story correct?
Well, I am not able to validate the recollection because I wasn't here at the time, but I can say that Whitman-Walker, the clinic, had been in the Anacostia area for a very long time, a smallest spot, and did what they could to address. But taking into consideration the population, had the planning and the foresight to build out this Max Robinson site here in Southeast DC, and is indeed responding to the call in so many different ways. We have created what we call a real community hub. So in this hub here, we have the Research Institute, which is what I lead here. We also have clinic space for primary care. We have continued to do research in clinical trials, in HIV, in every possible aspect of HIV care. But also on our partnership on the clinic side, the clinic sees all kinds of primary care. You can come here for your regular primary care. It does not have to be related specifically to HIV, but it is an expertise that we have, and we continue to use it. So this is all for everyone. This building, we want people right across the street to know that they can walk over here. We have there's emergency clinics, and those same individuals also have the opportunity under the Whitman-Walker Health System to be part of clinical trials and research, because we know that research is how we get medicine. So if you're not part of the research package, you're not part of the ending result. And that is something that the Whitman-Walker Health System wants to turn around, especially here in Southeast DC.
Let's give folks an idea of location, because I keep saying Alabama Avenue right down the street, but that's because I know where you are. But I don't know if the rest of the viewers would know. So how do you all tell people where you are?
So first of all, we're right in the back of me is the Congress Heights station. So the metro is right here. You come out the metro, and there's this big Whitman-Walker building right smack there. Our address is 1201 Sycamore, So we are at Sycamore and Oak. Now, we're probably familiar with the Care First Center over there and Sycamore and Oak. So we're right here. You can go right after your primary care visit and you can go to Sycamore and Oak and have something to eat.
Wonderful. Okay, that's location, so folks can say, "Oh, oh, 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 yeah, I know where they are. I know where they are." And so, as far as it's interesting because you're not far from the new Cedar Hill Hospital, and but you're sort of like the stop before the hospital, and I don't mean like
Excellent.
you know what I'm saying.
Yes, yes.
Before
And
you
I'd
have
like
to
to,
go into the hospital, you can go to Max Robinson to keep you from going into the hospital if you don't have to.
that is poetic. That is really the point. The point that I want to stress to individuals, I want to stress to this community. The hospital needs to only be for some adverse emergency. It cannot be the place where you get care. That is not what they're for. They're there to respond to an emergency. The primary care location and the research location is the preventative medicine program. It has worked for centuries for all humans. So if you get your primary care and you continue with your primary care on an annual basis, or you call your doctor just because something feels odd, that avoids a major hospitalization. That is our way of keeping safe. And within our healthcare economic system, and I say economic system with all due respect, the more we're sick, the more the system grows. So understand that you taking care of your body and taking your primary care and being part of research is how we are able to prevent having to have a major issue to go to a hospital. So I really would encourage everyone to make sure that appointment is made. Take your primary care seriously, respond to your body when it's talking to you, and get the care before it turns into something much more serious.
So, Ken, for those again who are listening who say they don't have a doctor, they're not quite sure how they're going to pay for it. Would they come to Whitman Walker and someone is there to sort of guide them through those services? How does that work?
Okay, certainly.
Mhm.
Whitman Walker, again, has been open to everyone. Whitman Walker does not turn individuals away. And so I would definitely say give a call, go on the website, set up an appointment. Somebody will answer you. Come down and speak with someone at the front desk who can guide you somewhere. As I said, there is also an urgent location. So feel free to understand that this is your community hub. And also at this Max Robinson, we also have the GW Cancer Center that is very much involved in screening and giving people direction. We have New Hampshire Medical Supplies. LabCorp will be coming in. Right now, we have the only community pharmacy. You can come in to this pharmacy and use it just like you would use a CVS. The pharmacy is here. And then on our coming soon, second floor has the high school student program with the Aussie program with DC, where students learn and are interested in healthcare fields. Then you have our research institute here on the third floor, and we have 2 floors of clinical care. So this is your hub, this is your community spot, and that's what we want it to be.
Who knew all that was going on in that building? And I've also heard, I mean, I know we talk a little bit about how you are addressing, access to healthy food and behavioral health services. We'll talk a little bit about that. But then I also, we had someone on not too long ago talked about the yoga classes that you all are offering and other kinds of activities that are there, which are not necessarily, they're health related, but not medical related. Anything you can share with us about, what else you all are doing? You're doing a lot, but what else?
Well, the or what you've just said, everything is actually very directly related. So a few weeks ago, or maybe it's a month ago already, so many things happening. We had a healthy block party.
Right.
So we talk about that as a major component of healthcare because bringing people together with some music, some food, and with specialists in different thought processes, behavioral health, research, talking about it and bringing our community together creates an education model in in a healthy, fun way and get people acclimated with what are the resources that are available. There's one thing to say that we're here and come and set up your appointment is another thing to completely immerse and engage. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to engage with the community so they can speak to us and tell us what they need. We may think as the subject matter experts in different parts of healthcare that we understand, but unless I'm in your shoes, I really don't understand much.
Mm-hmm.
And that you must know what you don't know. And simply because I see you doesn't mean that I understand and I feel everything. So I think our biggest part of our healthcare model that we want to collectively strive to is being able to have people feel comfortable, have people feel trust, have people wanting to have a care and Whitman-Walker as synonymous. And that means that they trust to come here and something will happen and we will process you through. We also have breast cancer of Washington in this building also. I neglected to
Wow.
include that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is huge because of the epidemic levels of breast cancer in our communities here.
Right.
So
Right.
again, we want to pull the resources here that is one stop that is here. And if we don't have the resource, how do we navigate you to that resource?
Before we go, I want to talk a little bit more about the research and the clinical trials that you all are doing there. Can you tell us a little bit about what the areas are and how people can participate, if they want to?
Okay, excellent. Um, in expressing that, I also want to make sure that you're aware that we're about to build out a biomedical hub here in the Max Robinson building.
Mm-hmm.
And that biomedical hub will be to encompass research that is needed for the community as we go forward. It will have a compounding and non compounding pharmacy. That means that we can mix drugs here for clinical trials. And we will also have the lab. That being said, we have been on the cusp of every clinical trial in HIV research from the beginning of the epidemic.
Okay.
Um, that has been something that has been going on. More recently, with the Institute for Health Research and Policy, we've been involved with Merck, with FEV, with NIH, all in doing clinical trials in all aspects, but with also the comorbidities, not just HIV, but folks who have HIV or at risk also are regular people that have other things that are comorbidities. And there's aging with HIV also. So we are looking at all of those aspects. Anyone that's interested can also just reach out onto the website www.whitmanwalker.org and they can look through the research areas and connect. We have research right now going on with young ages between 18 and 24. We have older cohorts. We have the SHARE study that talks about this pilgrimage all the way through HIV from 40 years old to now. So there's research on all different levels, and there is the advancement of other research to deal with also the other comorbidities and diseases that are affecting our area.
Well, the saving grace or the good news is that the percentage of the population that's dying from HIV or AIDS has definitely declined. I know it's still an issue, and again, we want to have days when we can really focus in on that as well. But that's the good news, and it's because of, I would think, because of clinical trials and medication, people are living longer and having a better quality of life, thanks to probably some of the work that you all are doing there.
And that is so true that less people are dying. There is a disproportional factor
Yeah.
related to the African American community. There is a stigma that we have not come to grips with in a way that will help our youth. And so I've had information provided to me in recent weeks where, people are dying. No one should die from HIV at this stage with the science that we have. So I'm appealing to our communities to understand that this is a public health issue and that we need to come around with solutions around how our young people and how anyone within our community feels free to be able to get care. We are here about the public health. This is very, very important. And one of the things that our board, we have a committee that's on our board that's related to community engagement, and our staff that's really interested in that. And we do want to find a way to work through that and care for others.
Aaron, when you say young people, what age group are we talking about?
Well, we only do research on the adult age, so from 18 on. So,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not others are affected, it's not something that I can give statistics on, but
Right.
I can say that young people are, in some ways, there's some adverse effects that we want to address and get in front of as soon as possible. And to do that, we must, as a community, engage. Um, the What we do in health, we should be able to walk in a building, and whether you have HIV or whether you have diabetes or whether you have cancer, there should not be a limitator. There should
Right.
not be a separation. There should be an ability to treat and care for. And so, if we know we have these issues, we need to get beyond it and care. So that's what I'm asking. I'm asking for us to simply care and allow for us to treat others.
Well, Dr. Heather Aaron, looks like we're going to have more conversations in the future because we definitely want to be one of those vehicles that helps to get the message out, not only through Let's Talk, but in the Washington Informer. So again, we're going to ride shotgun. We want to be the partner to make sure that specifically this community gets the message and that you all can really talk about what success looks like. We would want to help to contribute to that. So thank you for so much for being with us today.
And thank you. And I won't say Dr. Barnes, I'll say Denise Barnes.
Denise is fine.
Denise Barnes. So thank you so very much. Thanks to the Informer for always being there and being a part of us. And thank you for the opportunity. Do
Oh,
appreciate
yeah.
it.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. My pleasure. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Bye bye.
So I want to thank both of our guests for reminding us about mental health and physical health and community health and health, particularly as it relates to, as Aaron, our guest said earlier, Gen Z, young people, between the ages of 18 and maybe 35. I'm guessing an age here, but access to healthcare is really important, and feeling comfortable enough to go to see somebody if you need help, and where those resources are. That's what we're here about. So I'm just glad that they were with us today. I want to thank you also again for spending a part of your Friday with us, or any day that you might be watching this broadcast. Remember that we always want to hear from you. You can reach out to us at news at washingtoninformer.com. If you have a guest that you would love to have us to speak with, we look forward to learning about the program, the person, or the event. Just reach out to us at news at washingtoninformer.com. Like I said, I'm Denise Rolark Barnes, not Dr. Barnes, but Denise Rolark Barnes. And until next week, remember to stay informed, stay engaged, and continue looking out for one another. Together, we can build stronger, healthier communities. We'll see you next week on Let's Talk.